warm welcome and thank you to all of you who are taking the time to join us today. And I also want to thank Javier because we've come to know each other quite well now. And I have to say the fact he has chosen to speak to this community means a lot to us. And the way he operates as a leader inspires me. And if you think about the organization, IKEA for me ultimately stands for one of the key examples of conscious culture. It's one of the tenets of conscious leadership. And I think about the brand and I think about the person. And what for me is a privilege and honor today is not just to have a conversation with Javier, but also to share these insights with you, our audience, who we care about so much, and hopefully have an opportunity through this first business conversation of the day to also enable us all to work better together. There is enormous opportunity here for us to do business together. And I hope that this is a great example of what we're going to talk about today. And so I also want to thank Nina Potenza, who was instrumental in helping make this happen. She's just been announced as the Chief People Officer of IKEA US. Please give a round of applause to Nina. And if you think about Javier's story, it is an amazing story. That is what you can read on the internet. But what I really want to focus on is this is a man who started in IKEA over how many years ago now?
24.
24 years ago. And just pause for a second and think about this. As a part-time individual, working several hours a week, sometimes in the weekends, but now has moved over the last 24 years to running a business which has 7 billion of sales nearly here in the United States. As Melanie mentioned, 18,000 co-workers, and they've just been announced that they're going to give in 2.5 billion to extend their reach and their impact in the US as well. So round of applause to Javier for the work he's done, but also the work he's intending to do. And so the first question I have for you all is how many people, by show of hands, actually have an IKEA product in their home? Just out of interest. Wow. Javier, you see that?
This worked well, very good. We didn't know how this was going to work.
The marketing team is working very well and clearly achieving their impact. And how many people actually know what IKEA stands for? Does anyone know? That's a harder question for the audience, but I'd love to know if anyone actually knows.
So IKEA stands by the name of the founder, Ingvar Kamprad, the I and the K, and then Elmtarit is the farm where he was born, and Gunnarit is the region where the farm is. So it has a meaning behind.
Well, we learn something every day.
Yeah.
Thank you. And let's just zero in. If we just step back for a second and just think about every single one of us in this organization, it comes back down to a founder. A founder has a deep passion to really do something different, to go against the grain. Yep. One of the questions I asked the audience, what are the kind of things they care about? We did a survey with the audience, and one of the things I really wanted to zero in, what was Ivar Kamprad really like? You had the honor and pleasure of working with him. Could you give an insight to the audience on what this man was like?
Yeah. Well, Ingvar, and I think everyone has an opinion. You read books, and there are books saying different things, right? I had the privilege to meet him. I think it was 2006. I was sales manager in one of the stores in Barcelona, where I'm originally from, and I had the privilege to meet him. Someone said, it's good if you are there early, because for sure, Ingvar would like to meet some of the early shifts in the store. Of course, the stores have long shifts of operations, and
sure.
I was there probably at 6 a.m. He arrived at 4 a.m.
Wow.
So, and the first thing he did was to go and say hello to the truck drivers, say thank you. And then the second thing he did was to check the shower and the little room that we had for the drivers, so we were taking care of them in a good way. He wanted always to have fresh coffee, something to eat, and a shower for the drivers. That was my first lesson, right, of really taking not things by granted, because let me say this, I was not that impressed when I saw that corner, right? It's not the corner we were taking more care of. But he was amazing, he was hugging, I think he hugged every single IKEA coworker. I remember him meeting a couple of customers when he was trying to introduce himself, and I remember saying, I am IKEA, right? Because he was actually the owner, so it was so fun. But that's who he was, extremely close to people, a real entrepreneur, really keeping the eyes open for opportunities.
And having read the book, and anyone who knows the story of IKEA, one of the things you realize about Ivan is his constant strive to improve. what was interesting to me, and in getting to know you as well, Javier, is your constant strive to improve, but also not improve just yourself, but the way you empower your leadership.
Yeah.
And I've noticed this very much, and I want to get this out there. First and foremost, the first lesson you've shared, he was an early starter. He would put immense effort in, but he will also empower people to lead.
Yeah.
Could you talk a little bit about that and what that means for you and the 18,000 co-workers?
There are two values, I think, that talk to this. One is different with a meaning, right? And we always have this picture in IKEA where you have all these, you are in the ocean, you have hundreds of blue fishes, right? And you have one yellow one that goes against all the others, right? This is who we like to see, and the one that we like to actually refer to, right? Like in the way we do things. And constantly being on the way, this is another one, which is one of the values that we are never there, right? And that was, Ingvar will say, let's have a celebration for 1 or 2 minutes.
Yes.
Let's open the celebration. Yes. Let's close the celebration. Let's keep going, right? And that would be his approach to this. But IKEA was also built, and not many people know this, but on some coincidences, I would say. 2 of the big things of IKEA just happened. One of them was the self-serve. We are so well known by the self-serve, right? You do your part.
Yeah.
How we like to say this? You do your part, we do our part, and together we save money, right? And this just happened because the first store we opened was so successful that it was supposed to be IKEA people doing the self-service, right?
Right. So originally, you could walk into an IKEA store, you would go up to the counter, you'd get a product, someone would bring it to you.
Someone would bring it, right? That's how it started.
That's
IKEA.
how it started.
Yeah.
How did it evolve into?
Because it was so successful. We had so many people queuing and waiting to get the goods that we had to open the warehouse. That's how self-serve started, right? And another one, which is also interesting, is the flat pack. We are well known by the flat pack, right? But and we are obsessed in not transporting air.
It causes me a lot of stress every time I go and buy something in Wembley in London because you can't fit it into the car. And I struggle with that, so I always try to get someone to come along with me.
So but remember, we all have an amazing service of transport and installation, assembly, and everything. So just a reminder on that. But anyway, for everyone. But the way it started was because, and that's Ingvar, right? He was extremely open and extremely curious about learning what is next, what can we do better, no? And he was just a customer that couldn't put one of these, it's called Loca table, still in the range today, after so many years, that a customer couldn't fit in the trunk of the car, so just disassemble the legs and put it in.
And that's how it started.
And that's how everything started, believe it or not.
So constantly looking for areas you can improve. And this is just a great example where when I read the values of the organization, I mean, they still stick today. And the 3 family members still in the business, which I think is fascinating. There are 3 parts to the business. They have their retail side, which is delivering a large degree of the returns, over 90% of the returns of the entire group. They have their malls and shopping mall side, which some of you may not know. When most people are trying to leave San Francisco or talk about the troubles, this is an example where you're going against the stream. IKEA have just announced, and some of you may know this, a store in San Francisco. And that's just a great example going against the grain. A massive store, which is now, how large is this store? Can you just share with the audience?
It's
300 million.
The investment was a big investment yes, on that area. And the store is 7,500, 75,000 square feet, more or less, 150 co-workers, opened already. And
But what is really interesting to me about this is not only you're going against the grain, you're going into a community where you can really change the essence of that community. The jobs you create, what you can do in helping the supply chain there, that's, I think, what's really relevant here. And that business, we talk about businesses as force for good, but actually looking at big businesses do that. How can the smaller businesses also do that as well? I want to start to talk a little bit about what can we learn from IKEA? And if there are things that you could share with us in the audience for the people here who may want to speak to you afterwards as well, is there any key lessons you can share in which the SMEs, the smaller businesses, can take from you into their businesses, into their towns, into their communities?
Well, I think first, I'm not here to teach anyone, but I really hope at the end of this session, if there are 2 or 3 hands that says, were you inspired about this, and is it moving something here so you can take something forward, then I'm super happy, right? But anyway, I think for us, Inbar said this very long ago, profit give us resources, right? And we see the profits as a way of achieving our vision. The vision was shared to create a better everyday life for the many people. And in order to do that, we need resources, right, to make that happen. So I think it started with the vision. And to understand IKEA a little bit, you also need to understand where we come from. We come from the south in Sweden, a poor area when everything started, that was mainly focused on agriculture, full of rocks. So in order to work on the soil, the first thing that needed to happen is to move these big rocks out.
Teamwork.
Teamwork, exactly. So you will team with my neighbor, right? Yeah. Or we as neighbors, we will team together to move these massive rocks. We didn't have any tools, we didn't have any of that. And this is how everything starts, right? So we need to work together, we need to work hard, and nothing is granted, right? And more important, we have fun together. At a certain point, we're going to have a coffee, we're going to have fun, and we're going to talk about how good things are. But anyway, this is probably where the vision starts, and I think this is one of the big things for IKEA. I think you will see the vision everywhere. If you visit an IKEA store and you enter from the coworker entrance, you will see the vision, one of the first things. Everything we start meeting, we will start probably with a vision, saying, this is why we are here and now. This is why we are meeting here and now. And if we don't deliver to the vision, then we failed to this last couple of hours when we are meeting. So it's always in the way we talk, and it's actually in the DNA of IKEA. I think the second part on this, and I don't know how many people know this, but Inca is the, let's say, the biggest arm of IKEA, the 95% of the business, the retail business, where I belong to. And it's owned by a foundation. Inbar actually gave Inca and IKEA to a foundation with the aim of always being always here, right? And being always here for the right reason. The way we operate is 15% of our profits. 15% every year
goes to the foundation.
Goes to the Inca Foundation. The foundation has two big tasks, right? And it's really to work on the children's side and mainly on two areas where we see the biggest threat for the future. Poverty, and we actually, Lynn, you talk about that, right? It is, thanks for that presentation, by the way. It was absolutely amazing.
That's beautiful.
Poverty and then climate change. These are the two areas where we have committed 15% going to the Inca Foundation to fund some of these investments.
And that ties back into, and I'm just going to connect these for the audience so they understand this, when you connect that back into your sustainability goals. Because when you think of the circular economy now, how does that translate into IKEA's mission and vision? It comes back to what you're trying to aim to do, if I understand correctly, in 2030 and 2050. Yeah. Can you just talk about that? Because that really plays out what the foundation is doing to how the business is attaining those goals as well.
Exactly. And I think here is where everything aligns, right? You have a good vision that we all agree. We have a common set of values. That one of them is, I mentioned two before. Another one is actually planet and people and planet positive.
Absolutely.
Right? And it's at the core, right? That's how we take decisions. And you said it, 2030, IKEA is going to be 100% circular, meaning any IKEA product is going to be reused, recycled.
So net effectively positive. Is that the way you're looking at it? And by 2050, carbon neutral.
Net zero 2050. Yeah, that's on the that includes the whole plan. So circularity is only one leg of that. We launched recently what we call buy back and resell. You can actually bring, for all the ones that raise your hand, you can actually bring your IKEA product. We will buy it from you, and we will actually.
That's really clever.
Fix it. Whatever needs to happen with that product, we will actually put it in another family's hand by a lower price. We're not going to make any dollar into this. Yeah. That's going to be neutral, but it's our intent to actually extend the life of products for as long as possible.
I love that. Round of applause.
Thank you. I've personally moved many times, right, with IKEA. I think in Spain I've lived in 3 or 4 different cities. Then I moved to the UK, lived in London, as I shared with you, for 5 years.
Every senior manager in IKEA seems to go via Wembley, the Wembley store.
Wembley is a key one. Wembley is it's one of these flagships in the entire world. So.
I drive past it
Makes
every day.
sense. Yeah.
But it also plays into my next thought, which is all about how you're creating not just what you've described as a more circular economy, but also much more customer awareness, demand about sustainable products, which is increasingly on the rise. Yeah. We all know that every single product or service we deliver as businesses here makes a big difference to our customers when they understand the route, where it comes from, how it's made, how you deliver it. Yeah. It turns then the question, and ultimately for me, is with these changing consumer behaviors and preferences, how are you really incorporating that sustainability into the product offering itself?
Well, it's fully integrated, and as this exercise worked well, right? We have the privilege of being in so many people's home, right? And with that, for me, goes a big responsibility of making sure the IKEA products are the right ones, and that's how we start all this, right? Then on the range perspective, we design products with 5 elements, you could say. Form, it needs to be nice. Functional, it needs to work. Price, it needs to be affordable for the many. Quality, needs to be long-lasting. And sustainability, right? So any product has to be circular, and that's our commitment, 2030 and so on. I walk in my basement every now and then, right?
This is in your home?
This is in my home here in the US.
We're invited to come and see your home if we want to come and see it and just check it out to make sure it fulfills everything you say it does.
Is this being recorded? I think we need to talk to my wife about that, but you are always welcome, of course, always welcome at my place. But, not in the basement, we'll take you to...
Not in the basement.
I promise I'll take you to level 1. No, but the basement, I was saying, we have a kitchen that I installed myself. I'm so proud about this.
Very good.
Sorry. That's the passion there. But the doors of the kitchen are made from plastic bottles, recycled, fully from that. It's a beautiful black kitchen, super stylish with good design. Love that. Another one that I can put as an example, and on the range side we can talk forever, right? But I think we were one of the best, sorry, I should never say that. The first eliminating incandescent bulbs from the range, and we only went for LEDs. At that time, and this is the way we like to see sustainable products, right?
That's a great example.
At that time, the price for that LED bulb was $7.50.
$7.50 for one bulb, right?
One bulb, $7.50. Today, you will buy a pack of 2 for $1.19, right? And that's our way of bringing more sustainable products to many more people. Affordable. We eliminated incandescent, we decreased the volume on that one to 0, and we increased the volume of LEDs, so we can actually have a much better price for many more people to save energy at home. As another example, you will not find batteries today in IKEA, right? Regular ones. You will only find rechargeable batteries because it's the right thing to do. And that has an impact, of course, in a lot of top-line revenue, right? But it's the right thing to do. And now we do the same. We put the volume on rechargeable batteries so we can reduce the price, making it more affordable for many more.
So then the question becomes for me is sustainability worth the price you pay for it?
100%.
Right? How can you, because today, so many businesses are striving just to stay alive, right? It's so tough out there. The environment which we heard from so many people we were speaking to last night is challenging. And so people are always thinking about how do I save cost? Where do I have to cut corners? And therefore, is there things like sustainability that come at risk of that? Yeah.
Well, we are there too. I mean, it's not that we are immune to anything happening in the world, right? I'll give you an example later on my experience I had recently. But anyway, coming back to this, I think we need to demystify once and forever that being a good business goes with a high price, right? That's not the case.
You want to get rid of that myth,
yeah.
Right? So the audience, if you're not sure how they're doing, I want you to talk specifically around how you're doing, because you shared with me a very interesting formula.
Yes.
which you use as a rule of thumb to determine whether something economically makes sense or not.
Yes.
Could you share that with the audience?
Absolutely, and it's in renewable energy. Today in IKEA in the US, we already generate more green energy than the one that we consume. And that has been like this for 4 or 5 years already. We already achieved that goal. We have 240,000 solar panels in our roofs. We also have a stake in 2 solar farms. We have 2 wind farms. We are investing in forestry with the aim one day of being self-sufficient, right? So we are not dependent on these crazy volatility prices of energy. So we are self-sufficient on that. One day we will be, probably I'm disclosing something here, but one day I hope we will be a provider of this, so we can actually bring affordable energy, green affordable energy to many more homes and places.
So not just the buildings which are becoming sustainable and self-sufficient, but also to the communities you see yourselves ultimately bringing.
100%.
That's really interesting.
That's first home, then we can talk outright. So we have a clear point of view on that. Any project that delivers under 10 years, it will make it through. And we see a positive impact in our P&L from day one. So by choosing the right things, it actually has a positive impact in the way we do business. So I think we need to start demystifying this, that all goes at a price, because it's not true, actually. We see in many ways it's the opposite.
I think one thing Javier said to me when he first came in, he sat for about a couple of hours in the back and he said, this is such a different type of conference to anything I've ever seen. The people are just really care for each other. And I came for the first time last year due to a friend, Anita Ward, who introduced me to conscious capitalism. And I have just been absolutely astounded by the sincerity and the genuineness in everyone. You heard that.
Yeah.
And I think it fundamentally comes down to one thing. And I think everyone in this room shares this, and you share this just in your persona and your humility, is relationships, right? Fundamentally, it's all about relationships, however we look at this. And therefore, when you look at the people that you lead, and I know Nina personally, I see how much she cares for her colleagues. But there's this shift where you're seeing so much competition from Amazon, from so many other players in the United States. And you could argue that now is a time when your culture is really what needs to shine through, because this attracts talent, it holds on to talent, and empowering people, as we alluded to earlier. Can you talk to the audience a little about how you're actually achieving that? Because that's really relevant to everyone in the audience. It's not just to enterprise, big business. But also, more importantly, when you talk about this big theme that I'm reading about in the papers now about IKEA, really empowering its people. You know, we talk a lot about challenges in the middle management of companies, right? How do you make sure the senior board gets it, right? How do you make sure the middle management really get it and you don't lose that message? Yeah.
Well, that's a big one, and keeping the culture alive is one of, I think, of the big tasks, right? I stayed in IKEA. I never shared this, right? But I was in university studying architecture when I joined IKEA.
How old were you at the time?
So this is 24 years ago. I was 22. I'm 46, so for the ones doing the maths, I make your life a bit easier. I always do it, I don't know why, but it happens. But anyway, I joined because of, at that time I would have said, look, it feels good. It feels so amazing, the togetherness, how we work together, how I can approach my boss and have a good conversation, right? So it felt good. And I decided to stay. This is one of the big reasons. The second is, of course, because I work for a company that I know that wants to do the right thing.
That's critical.
Yeah. Are we perfect? No. Are we still on the way? Always.
Love that.
We will never get there, right? But I love to wake up in the morning understanding and knowing that I work for a company where I can make a difference, right?
Absolutely.
And this is extremely difficult times, and I'm sure we all share in this room, right? Going through COVID as the leader of a big organization, I went to try to find books where it says how to lead through a pandemic. I couldn't find one, and it needs to be written. I invite someone to write it, because it was so difficult, and I appreciate so much in this room and every leader that is trying to do the right thing, especially in such a difficult situation. We were discussing, right? I think I started here in the US almost 5 years ago, and I was saying to my boss the other day, look, I don't think I've had a normal year, right?
Yeah, 5 years.
For the last 5 years. And I think the problem is this is here to stay, right? And every year we're going to be thrown a new challenge. So finding this adaptability is going to be a flexibility super key. And here is where the co-workers are so important, right? Playing this role. As I said, you will see the vision of the company almost entering any IKEA building from the co-worker entrance. We measure it actually. We know that 75% of our co-workers feel engaged and inspired about the vision.
Right.
So 3 weeks ago, we had Peter Kampret, Ingvarsson, in the office in Conshohocken outside Philadelphia. His job is, besides sitting on a couple of boards, is actually to keep the IKEA culture alive. We do training on values, and most important, we recruit by values. I didn't finish architecture. I did business administration, so I have, you could say, 1.5 university degrees.
Yeah.
The half doesn't count, but it's important to me. Anyway, but no one in IKEA knows.
Yeah.
I don't think no one knows, right? Because we don't recruit based on that. We recruit based on values, right? The rest, we can, of course, teach or we can learn. And of course, we look certain competencies for specific roles.
What was interesting about our conversation earlier as we were preparing for this is you shared not only it's becoming so challenging today in the world as a CEO, but every single decision is scrutinized more so. So you need to think about every stakeholder that you report to and is looking at you almost like a camera, right? And you have to be conscious of every decision. But also whenever you're trying to plan, it's so hard to plan these days because every plan just gets torn apart. So as you're going towards the goal, you think to yourself, yeah, I'm making progress. Then all of a sudden you wake up and then another challenge gets thrown in your way, another challenge gets thrown in your way. So for these leaders in the room today, how do you stay relevant? How do you stay in touch with what the world needs? And I think you've hit the nail on the head. If people don't believe in what your product or purpose is and they believe in the tenets of conscious capitalism, which I know you didn't describe it necessarily as a conscious capitalism-based business, but also very much conscious cultures. That's why it resonated with you, this community and this audience. Do you want to talk to that a little bit?
Yeah, absolutely. You know, I think 20 years ago, our role will have been different. IKEA was doing things and not talking about it for many years because it's not part of the Swedish culture, right, to talk about it.
Right.
And it's actually, no, we do it, right? And this has been good up to a certain point. Now, for me, this new generation of leaders, and probably 10 years ago, and probably forever now, but especially this decade we have in front of us, requires so much leadership and requires every leader to stand up and to talk about this, right? And to help each other and work together, because this cannot be, this cannot happen by one or two, right? I learned ages ago, you need 6 to create a movement. Then someone else said, you only need 2 to dance tango, right?
Yeah.
And then I saw this video of this guy, maybe it's inappropriate here, but it's this guy dancing totally drunk, right? I don't know if you have seen it, but then suddenly another one jumps in,
Yes,
totally drunk too, then another one, and then, so you only need 1 to create a movement. And that's my invitation here, right? Let's come together and dance, because it requires the situation so much leadership. It's unbelievable what's happening outside, unbelievable, and it requires so many people to stand up.
It's scary, isn't it?
Yeah.
What's happening out there in the world. But also, I think we can take comfort from the fact that all of us have a very important role to play. Because if we just go back into our businesses, back into our communities, and do one thing that's positive on the back of this, these few days together, that could itself create a domino effect and hopefully inspire many others. And I think that's
absolutely
at the heart of what is great leadership today, is making sure you're inspiring others to lead. And you're a great example of that. Let's move on to, we want to talk a little bit about your profit versus purpose piece, right? So we talked a little about what you're doing in terms of 2030, 2040, but can you share today kind of what are the biggest priorities for IKEA now? You've been granted $2.5 billion by the board. It's a massive responsibility. Yes. How do you think about investing in that in a thoughtful and conscious way, if I can use that term, such that you also, as the family has always done, thinking long term. How are you thinking about investing that, well, whatever investment it is, doesn't matter if it's a smaller investment, how do you think about deploying capital in this environment today to create the kind of outcomes that we're talking about, we want to all achieve?
Yeah, well, the investment goes in all different areas, right? A big part of the investment is going to go to make, as I said, 80% reduction of our CO2 emissions by 2030. That's a massive step, right? So a big part of this is going to go into this area, so making our businesses, our buildings sustainable and self-sufficient, right? Another big part is going to be on expansion. So today, in the US, in the size of a continent, we only have 51 IKEA stores, so there is a space for many more. And you will see many more of these IKEAs happening. We're in Texas. Texas has been also one of these priority areas. So you are going to see many of these investments happening. We're investing in forestry as well to protect forests and to make sure that they are treated in a fair way and in a good way. And then on our supply chain and also on our electrification, we do it already in New York. All electric, all the deliveries are done, the last mile done with electric vehicles, and we are going to scale it in the rest of the US. So commitment is in 2025. Only 1.5 years here, or 2 maximum. Here we need to speed up. Is going to happen. So bigger IKEA, closer to people, and remember this 15%, right, of our profits go to the foundation, so we can reinvest back in society. We don't pay dividends to anyone else than the foundation, right? So all the money stays in, it's a private company, all the money stays in the company, not even to family, not even to anyone. It stays in the company, 50%, to create a better world, right? So that's the main goal, and that's, again, we are so far away from many people, and we don't fulfill our vision until we are closer to the many. So that's ultimately what we want to do with these investments, and the US has been a prioritized market.
US is the fastest growing market, as I understand it, as well, or the largest market?
It is the largest retail market in the world.
In the world
right
now.
Yeah.
And therefore the opportunity to make the change that you want to see is also there as well.
Yeah. You know, retail in the US employs 40 million people, total retail. So when we talk about impacting people, when we talk about helping people to make it, right, and to have a decent life, and we are an industry that has a massive impact. And I'm so proud to see many of the actions that not only IKEA, but many other retailers are taking. So we can change the system from inside. I'm such a believer of that. So.
Javier, I think your passion comes through when you talk, your genuineness, your authenticity, but also the real wish to make meaningful change. And your commitment, not only staying in the business, but also what you're doing is testament to the fact that we all, I think, look at you with pride in the way you're leading the business. And I think everyone, round of applause for Javier.
Thank you. Thank you.